Hello, hello. How is everybody? Oh my gosh. Welcome, welcome. Let me know if you guys can hear me okay. It's so good to see all of you. This is so amazing. I'm just making sure um, that you guys are seeing my video and that you can see me and hear me. Awesome. Yay, yes, finally, time to do some coloring, a slider card. Awesome. All right. So I'm Jenn Shurkus. Welcome to my Coast into Card Making Lawn Fawn class. We are going to be making 3 Lawn Fawn cards. One of them is going to be an interactive slider card, and we are going to dive right into it because we've got a lot to get done, right? All right. So let me just switch my camera over. So, like I mentioned, we're going to be making 3 cards. Lawn Fawn is really known for scene building and making cute little scenes on their cards. So, this is 2 of the cards that we're going to be making. And then the other thing that Lawn Fawn is really known for is their interactive cards. So, we are going to be making a slider card and we are going to coast into card making. So to get started, what I actually want us to do is we are going to get all of our coloring out of the way. I actually made it so that everything on all 3 cards are colored the same. And I shared this swatch list in the group so that you guys could pick out whatever markers or pencils you guys have to color with. These are the colors that we're going to be using. Also, in your booklet, I did also share, this is just the images I colored with colored pencils. So if you don't have alcohol-based markers, totally okay. You can use colored pencils. You can use whatever you want. Honestly, because you're home, you could be stamping these images on watercolor cardstock and watercoloring them. It's really whatever you guys are comfortable with. Anytime you take a class with me, you get a coloring guide like this. And I am almost always coloring with Copic markers, but these coloring guides are really helpful whether you're coloring with colored pencils or watercoloring, because one, it just kind of gives you an idea of what colors to start with, but it also gives you an idea of where to put your shadows. I have been teaching classes for a long time, and I have just kind of learned over the years what people struggle with when they're coloring. And one of the things is where to put that shadow. You don't want to deal with figuring out where the light source is or anything like that. So we are going to get started with our coloring. And I actually have all of my little critters in this little bowl. And then I also have all of my roller coasters set aside as well. And we're going to do all of our coloring. I know everybody was worried about having their images already cut because it is really tricky to hold on to a teeny little image and color it. But a really fun trick that I learned from my crafty friend Mona Toth is she just uses a piece of purple tape. You can use a piece of washi tape. You could use press and seal, whatever it is you want. I'm going to kind of de-stickify it a little bit more on my pants. But you're just going to use a piece of tape and we are going to attach our images to it. And this is going to give us a larger bit of real estate to get our coloring done. Now, when I'm making a card just at home by myself, I definitely stamp color, and then die cut. But in the sake of class, we don't have time, right, to wait for everybody to die cut. So all of my online classes, I've really been recommending to everybody to do it this method where you're holding down the images with some purple tape. So what I'm doing, and you can use washi tape as well. Of course, I just trimmed my nails, so picking up things is trickier. But what I'm doing is I'm kind of putting like images together. And the reason why I'm doing that is because everything is going to be colored the same for all 3 cards. I did not want to overcomplicate it. I share a lot of coloring tips and tricks on my website and in my classes, and we're going to learn some of those today. But I also knew we had not a lot of time, and I had a lot of fun things I wanted to teach you. So I'm just kind of sticking these little guys on, and I'm going to get myself another piece of purple tape. And I'm just pressing it to my pants, which are totally comfy yoga pants, because why not, right? We're all crafting at home. And now I'm just going to finish putting my little images on the tape. And again, I'm just kind of putting like images together because we are going to be coloring them all together. I'm just looking. I knew I had another little bear. And I just love this roller coaster set. What's really fun about Lawn Fawn stamp sets is everything really coordinates together. So now that you guys have this coaster critters, if you have any other Lawn Fawn sets in your stash, or you're going to purchase any other sets after this weekend, everything coordinates together. Lawn Fawn takes a really long time designing their images and working it out so that things coordinate. And what happens is people tend to want to keep buying sets, even if they've been previously released, because they might be new to Lawn Fawn and they're just discovering them and they didn't realize that they had a specific set. So Lawn Fawn actually doesn't retire sets very often because as long as people are buying them, they will keep making the same sets, which is really, really awesome. All right. I'm not going to stick my roller coasters down because those are big enough for me to hold on to. But you can see I've got all my fun right here, right? So we are actually going to start I'm going to share with you guys my 2-color blending Copic tips. And these tips can be used with any alcohol-based markers. And so I'm actually going to start with the ticket booth. And I've got my markers in just a little cup off to the side, so I knew which colors I had told you guys. I share a really fun Copic 101 tutorial on my website. So if you go to shurkus.com and you click tutorials in the menu, there's a Copic 101 blog post. And a lot of what I'm going over today, I also share in that blog post. And then I also share a lot of stuff in my other online classes, and I hope to offer an online Copic class later this year. So I personally tend to do 2-color blending because I personally just didn't, especially, I mean, I've been coloring with Copic markers for over 10 years. And back in the day when I first started collecting them, I didn't really have a lot of expendable income and I didn't want to purchase all 300 plus markers. So, what I have told myself and taught myself over the years is you don't really need all of the markers to have beautiful coloring. And most of the images that I like, whether they're Lawn Fawn or Newton's Nook or Hero Arts, I tend to gravitate towards smaller images. So, to get a nice blend, you don't need a lot of markers. So, I tend to always do a two-color blend. The other thing that I like to do is I actually start with my dark color first. So I'm going to start with the E37, which is just a dark brown. And like I mentioned, I don't worry about where the light source is. I just tell myself I'm going to shadow on the left side and the crevices or the right side and the crevices. And when I say crevices, I kind of mean your hairline, armpits, under chins, things like that. But I kind of always just keep in mind, and we'll talk about it a little bit when we go to do our bear. You just don't want to shadow like a face, right? Because we want the face to be nice and bright. So for the ticket booth, I am going to start shadowing on the left side and the crevices. So I'm going to take my dark marker. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to take my dark marker and I'm just going to add a little bit of color down the left side, kind of like an L. And because this is a fairly larger area, I'm just going to bring that color out a little bit. And we can go ahead and add the shadow to each of our ticket booths. When we get into the blending, we're going to want to work one ticket booth at a time. But the shadow is going to be the same on all of our ticket booths. Okay. And then for the rest of the structure of the ticket booth, what I like to do on this kind of lip of the wood, the edging of the wood, I like to have a little bit of a highlight. So I'm actually going to add a little dark on the left and the right. All right. And then we've got our poles holding up our awning. I'm going to add a little bit on the bottom and the top. Those are our crevices, right? Under the awning and coming up from the base of the ticket booth. So I'm going to just add that dark on all the ticket booths. All right. All right. So now I'm going to use my light brown. I'm using E33, but I'm using my light brown. And I am going to take that light brown and I'm going to concentrate right on the edge of the dark brown, going a little bit onto it and a little bit off. And I'm basically extending that shadow a little bit more. So you can do little circles or flicks, whatever you're comfortable with teaching. I'm sorry. I'm thinking about how I'm teaching. Whatever you feel comfortable with coloring. And then once you don't see the line from that dark marker anymore, that's it. Now, I'm going to hold this up to the camera because you do see a little bit of pushback. It's kind of like that vein from the E37. It's the light brown pushing back the dark brown. Don't worry about that line just yet. Stick with me. I'll show you what we're going to do to that. And then the other dark surfaces, we're just going to kind of dab on the edges until you don't see a dark line anymore. And again, now I'm only going to work one ticket booth at a time because alcohol-based markers, because they're alcohol-based, it evaporates fairly quickly. So you kind of want to concentrate on one little area at a time before you move on to another area. Okay. So now that I have things blended out, again, we're not worrying about that pushback line. Now that I have things blended out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish coloring my ticket booth with the light brown. But the reason why I didn't put the light brown down first is because when you do that, I tend to see marker here. So I tend to keep coloring over with marker. And with Copic markers, with one marker, you can actually get a shadow by adding layers of that one marker. So if you're just starting to collect your alcohol-based markers, you can just have one brown and you just keep coloring and coloring and coloring and coloring in one area, and it's going to get darker and darker and darker. So because on this ticket booth, I want that right-hand side to be the brightest as possible, I am leaving that white until I've finished my blending. Then I take my Copic, my light brown, and I'm just going to do one layer of color. You'll see I just did a swoop of one layer. I'm not doing little circles. I'm not repetitively flicking or anything like that. All right. And then we have something that looks like this. And you're kind of like, Jen, I don't really think you know what you're talking about because that doesn't look very good yet. So what I'm going to share with you is to fix this line that's happening right here and to fix the pushback line a little bit. So what we're going to do to fix this first line is with the light brown marker, I am going to just take my marker and flick it out on the edging, and that's going to soften that line. As it softens the line, it actually gives an in-between tone. So what we've done is we actually have the dark marker on the left. We have 3 to 5 layers of the light marker when we did our little circles. Then we have maybe 2 to 3 layers of the light brown when we did our flicking out. And then we have our 1 layer of light brown. So you have that kind of, 3 to 5, 3 to 4, 2 to 1 type of thing, okay? And now, if that pushback line is still giving you a little bit of problem, I'm going to go back to my dark marker and just kind of add a little bit more dark. And while your paper is nice and saturated from the Copic markers, you're going to find that that dark is going to kind of soak into your paper, and you're not going to see the line as much. So look at that. It looks like wood and it's so cute. All right. I'm hoping that, oh, thank you. I had to do teal nails for this event and for my event. I was like, oh, perfect. All right. So now we're going to do our second ticket booth. All right. So we're going to do the same exact steps. We are going to do little circles or repetitive dashes, whatever you're comfortable with, on the edge of that dark brown until you don't see a line anymore. And we're going to do that on all of our dark browns. Okay. Right? Once we have that blended out, we're going to continue with our light brown and do one layer of color. Right? And then once that's done, we're going to take our light brown and fleck it out to just blend that line. Then I'm going to go back in with my dark brown and just add a little bit more contrast on the edge, just mainly this big area. I'm not going to worry about the poles, just to add a little bit more definition. All right. So now I am going to go and do my third ticket booth. Little circles, blend out that line. So I have been coloring with Copic markers for 10 to 12 years now. I've actually been teaching with them as long as I've been coloring with them. I used to manage a local store here on Cape Cod where I live. And these markers that I'm using are that old, 10 to 12 years old. You can change the tips if your tip gets worn out. They're handmade nibs, so they're really, really high quality. And you can also refill them. So I always tell people that yes, Copic markers are expensive for sure, but they are a lifetime marker. It's like something you're going to put in your will because they're going to last forever if you just take care of them. All right, so we're finishing up just the brown on this last ticket booth. And hopefully you guys will see there are so many ways to color. Um, and there's no right or wrong way. It's just finding the way that works for you, right? I am really good friends with Kathy Rinkusin and Kelly Latavola, and they both have amazing coloring skills and, use like 39 colors on one ticket booth. And that is totally okay. And I'm in awe and I love to watch them do that. But when you're first coloring or learning to color, I think that might be a little intimidating. So I really like to teach people maybe an easier way. And then once you get comfortable with this way, you can graduate to their way, right? I haven't graduated yet. This is how I've been coloring with Copic markers for over a decade now, and I am perfectly fine with that. Okay, so now we're going to do two color blending on our bears. I figured why not, right? It's the same exact colors that we're using, and I'm going to add a little bit of shadow on the left side and the crevices. So the crevice on this bear is little back ear, his little, it's not his armpit, but kind of his armpit coming off his nose, and then a little bit down by his belly on his back leg. So I'm holding this up to the camera so you guys can kind of see the shadow. That's awesome. Yeah, Chris's my boyfriend's daughter, Kate, is so artistic and blows me away with what she can do. And ever since Chris and I have been together, we've been together for almost 9 years now. She's been getting like artist grade supplies like Prismacolor pencils, Copic markers, and what she can do with them is just amazing. I'm like over here, I'm just going to color this bear with two colors. And she's like sketching self-portraits and things. So anyways, all right. So I've got my shadow down on my bear. And now I'm going to just work on blending one bear at a time. So the same thing as the ticket booth, I'm going to blend out by dabbing or circles, whatever works. Sometimes small areas, it's just dabbing. Dab out that shadow. And don't color anywhere else on your bear because we want him to stay true light wherever that is, all right? Once your shadow is blended out, I'll finish coloring the rest of the bear with one layer of color. You can kind of see I like force myself, just one layer. And then I'm going to take that light brown and just flick it out on the edges to soften it. And remember, what's awesome, you guys, is because Lawn Fawn, you have this stamp set and die. If this is the first time, some of you might have purchased a few of the Copic markers because you're like, ooh, Jenn's going to teach me and I really want to try it out. But maybe this is the first time you've used them and you're not maybe happy with what kind of coloring you're doing right now. The beauty of that is you guys have the stamp and die set. So I really recommend stamping out a whole bunch of ticket booths and just practice your browns. Browns and grays are some of the easiest colors to blend with Copics. So even if you want to practice, but it's something that's not meant to be brown or gray, I still recommend just trying just to get really comfortable with blending these markers out. And the more you do it, the easier it will come to you. And if you are a fan of Lawn Fawn, I post a lot of Lawn Fawn cards. I post a lot of different brands as well, but I post a lot of Lawn Fawn cards on my website. So you're going to be able to use that as a stepping off point too, to kind of pick colors for different critters and things like that. And we go over the coloring of all the different sets in my other online classes as well. All right. Yeah. So you're not going to forget that one layer rule if you just keep it white to the very end. And then you go ahead and add that color. And that's the easiest way. So while we're doing the two color blending, I'm going to just kind of do that on the other items that are two color blended. So for the cotton candy, I'm just using a light pink and a pink that is a little bit darker. All right. So I'm going to start with my dark, which is the RV21. And I'm just going to add a shadow on the left side. Just a line. Nothing fancy. It's just cotton candy, right? Then I'm going to go in with the RV20 or RV10, excuse me, the lighter pink. And same thing, I'm just going to dab out the edges. These colors are really similar to each other, so you'll find the blend is so easy. And then I finish coloring it in. If you want a little bit more definition in that pink, just go right back in with your RV21 while your kind of cardstock is still a little wet and just add a little bit more. And that will give you that really cute definition. All right. So now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to set my little critters aside. And the other thing that I kind of did a blend on is my roller coaster. And this is completely optional. All of this is optional. You could just color your bear one brown, and I'm sorry, because it's a lawn fawn bear, it's going to be cute no matter what you do in my eyes. So for the roller coaster, I used two purples, and I'm using V15 and V12. All right. And just like everything else so far, I'm starting with the dark. And what I did on the roller coaster is I actually started the dark colors at the base of the roller coaster. So I'm just taking that V15 and coloring up from the bottom. So the whole bottom bar of wood, I'm envisioning this is an old wooden rickety roller coaster, but this is Critter World, so the wood is purple because it can be, right? And I'm really impressed with myself for using purple and not using like my beloved teal. But I'm just going to do the base of the roller coaster like this on all three of these bigger parts of the roller coaster. And I just kind of find it easy to kind of do all the verticals and then the horizontal, just nice and fast and easy. And we'll do the third one. Now I'm doing both. I don't know. I've switched it up both times. But color it however it is easiest for you. All right. So now that I have the purple, the dark purple down on the big pieces, we've got the two kind of back coasters. They are also just going to be the same exact way. And you could most certainly stick this to some tape if you wanted to, if you're having a hard time holding on to it, or a piece of press and seal. You know, again, whatever you're comfortable with. And I know if you were at home making your own cards, you would probably stamp, color, and then die cut. But sometimes we have to do things a little differently, right? So now I'm going to take my lighter purple, the V12, and because these areas are not that big, you can kind of get away with blending all the darks on all three roller coaster pieces and the two smallers. So I'm just doing that. I'm just dabbing that V12 repetitively until I don't see the line from the V15 anymore. And sometimes it needs a little bit more dabbing, and sometimes it needs a little less dabbing. It's really whatever looks good to your eye. This is your project. And what's nice about this is the coloring is pretty quick and easy. So if you wanted to make a few of these cards at a time, you can kind of see how it's really not taking that long at all to get our coloring done, which is always nice. Now, I just really went out of the lines. Look at that. Tisk, tisk, tisk. I will show you a fix for that in just a minute. Um, it's, I don't know, when I'm working on my own, the images are a lot closer to my body. So when I'm reaching, sometimes I tend to go out of the lines a lot more when I'm doing my lives than not. All right, so now that everything is blended together, I'm going to continue with the light marker and we're just doing one layer. Okay, so we're just going around. I'm actually going to use my other side for this part. Somebody just said, how do you know which colors are best to blend together? So with Copic markers, the letters and the numbers all basically tell you information. And honestly, I'm not going to really explain that on this live because it sounds more complicated than it really is. But if you check out my Copic 101 blog post, and again, that's on my tutorial page, and I think Scrapbooking Cards Today linked it for me earlier. Um, it explains what the letters mean and what the numbers mean. But what I'll tell you is staying within the same color family. So we're only using V's. We're not using an RV and a V. So staying in the same color family is very helpful. And then also having your numbers not be that far apart. Okay. And that's where it starts to get a little bit complicated because even though I've been calling it a V12 and a V15, the first number and the second number represent different things. So it's really a V12 and a V15. And I've probably already lost you at this point. So just check out again that Copic 101 post on my site. It's free, it's there, it's just a resource I have for everybody. Because I think when you're reading it, you'll be able to kind of absorb it a little bit better. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me. But it's basically the short answer is to stay within the same color family and keep your numbers 4 to 6 numbers apart, no more than that. Okay. All right, so our roller coasters are done with the purple, but another thing that I like to do is I take a W2, which is just a really light, warm gray, and what I'm going to do is all of these crossbars, I'm just tracing over them very quick. It doesn't have to be perfect, but what this is going to do, and I'm going to hold up one with it and one without it, it just really adds like so much definition. I saw Jen, she was using the tri-blends on her card yesterday, and she just did this light gray around the flowers, and it really just made such a big difference. And this is very similar. So the top one has no gray, and the bottom one has some gray. And I think you guys can see the difference. The bottom one, those crossbars just look so much more defined in my eyes. And again, I still know I went out of the lines over there. I am going to fix that. I will show you guys after we're done coloring because I have a feeling there might be more areas that I went out of the lines. Just saying. I know myself well. All right, so I am just doing all the crossbars on all the roller coasters. And again, if you're at home making cards on your own and you want to make a few cards, that are the same, I think that we all decided we're going to make 2 cards, right? So we can send one, like Jennifer McGuire is encouraging us, and then keep one. Well, the best way to do it is to kind of color the way we're coloring right now. You know, do all your purple coloring, do all your brown coloring. It helps make it go by a little bit faster. All right, so now that I have those roller coaster pieces colored and I have the W2 in my hand, what I'm going to do is add a little bit of W2 to the center of the wheels on the big coaster cars. And then I'm just looking at my samples. It looks like one of the tickets, I just kind of took the W2 and did a little L, and I'll hold this up to the camera. One of the tickets, I just did a little L, just kind of out inlined the left-hand side and the bottom of the ticket. Okay, again, just adding some definition. And everything else that we are coloring today is just one color, really, really simple. So I'm just going to kind of talk us through it. I'm going to start with the R35, which is just a warm red. You can use any red marker. And what I did with this is I did every other stripe on the awning of the ticket booths. And what's nice about any alcohol-based markers is when you color, even with one color, there's no streaking. So you're not getting any lines, and they allow you to layer colors without pilling the cardstock. So water-based markers, you can't really layer colors because they're going to kind of eat up the cardstock. You can most certainly watercolor with them with a paintbrush and layer colors, but not marker to paper type thing. And the big roller coaster cars, those are going to be all red except for the little stripe on them and their tires, but the whole body of the car is going to be that R35 or whatever red you guys are using. And then the same thing with all the little roller coaster cars. We're just gonna, and this is real quick, fill all of these in. This trick with pre-die cutting your images is nice if you kind of wanted to go to an actual crop and create event or any in-person crop in the future when we're able to do that again. If you don't want to bring a whole bunch of stamps and dies with you, you could pre-cut and then just use this kind of tape method, right? All right. And then our single balloons, not the bunch of balloons, the single 2 balloons we have, those are going to be red. So I'm just coloring those. All right. Then we have, let's go ahead and do our fox since he is right here on my tape. And for him, I'm using a YR14. It's kind of a caramel color. It's a little mix between an orange and a brown. YR in Copic coloring, that's like a yellow red is what that kind of stands for. And so I'm just going to color him all in one color. Really, really cute. I'm keeping his face white. And we have something we're going to do to faces in a little bit. But we are going to go ahead and color all 3 foxes the same way. All right. And then I've got my third little guy over here. I love these little critters in this set because they are like little mini versions of critters that we have in other sets that are a little bit larger. So these could be like those critters like kids or they just make such cute little scenes. I just think they're adorable. But okay. So now what I'm going to do is let's go ahead and take that W6 marker, the dark gray, and I'm going to just color in all the tires of the roller coasters, the little cars and the big cars. So hopefully you guys are seeing, you know, yes, we did a little bit of two color blending, but some of these images are so small that they don't need to always be two color blended or three color blended or whatever. Just one simple color with a nice quality marker really will make it look so, so nice. All right, so now we've got our trio of balloons, and these guys are pink, yellow, and blue. So I'm going to use the RV21 and color the back balloon. And I'm going to use the B00 for the left balloon. I'm assuming you guys are all busy coloring, and that's why there's not as much chatter in the chat. And then, of course, we have the question and answer after class. So if people have questions, I'll be hopping on over into the Facebook group and answering questions there. And then I'm just using a light yellow, a Y13 on that third balloon. And the Y13 is actually the little flag, I think, right? Yep. Just check in. It's funny. I made these cards so long ago, I really just had to become familiar with them again. And the last two little tickets are also Y13. And I apologize, you guys. I meant to mention, which I did mention in my handout, but I have stamped everything with the Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink. There are many black ink pads on the market. You just want to make sure if you're using alcohol-based markers that you're using an ink pad that works well with alcohol-based markers. So I forgot to mention that in the beginning, and I apologize. All right, the last thing that we're going to do, which honestly makes me laugh out loud or giggle. It actually makes me giggle, but I'm going to use the RV10 and I'm going to go around and add a little bit of rosy cheeks to the bunnies and to the fox. Oh my gosh. They just make me smile when you add the rosy cheeks. I mean, come on, right? How can you not smile? I love it. Okay. You can also add a rosy cheek to the bear. The cool thing about alcohol-based markers is a lighter marker will overpower the darker marker, almost like a bleach pen that you use on your clothes to take a stain out, right? So you can totally do that as well. So what I'm going to do to fix my roller coaster is I actually use a white gel pen. Now, Copic markers have a blender pen, and it's 0. That's the number for it. And it is not a blender. First of all, I'll tell you, it does not help you blend. And it takes color away. And I do not like to use it though, because it's a really harsh formula and it honestly makes things more messy than it's worth. But you can see over here, I went out of the lines. Well, maybe you can't see because all I did was dab some white gel pen right over it and it's good to go. So my white gel pen fixes all the things, okay? If you have a brand new marker and it's letting out a lot of ink, take both caps off and just kind of let it set for a little bit, 5 to 10 minutes. And then when you go to color with it again, keep the second cap off. It just kind of needs to breathe. That usually helps. All right, so we are going to set aside our colored images and we are going to start doing some ink blending. So on both of these cards right here, we are going to be ink blending our panels. So we have our white piece. I believe this is 4 by 5 1/4. I'm going to get my ruler out because I don't want to start saying measurements that are wrong and then I don't want to confuse you guys. But yeah, so 4 by 5 1/4. And then we're going to take out our white squares from this piece. You've got 2 that are 1 3/4. Yep, 2 that are 1 3/4 by 1 3/4. And you have 2 that are 3 by 1 3/4. All right, so we've got 4 squares or pieces and our big panel. So we are going to do some ink blending. You guys can use any water-based dye ink or Distress Oxide to do your ink blending. I am using Lawn Fawn's Merman ink just because I like that color, but it really can be any ink pad that you guys have. And I'm actually going to start with my smaller pieces. And I'm just using a blender brush. I know you guys got some from Gina K in your box. You can use a blender brush. You can use an ink blending tool, whatever works for you. I do find when you're ink blending, working on a glass surface, this is my studio table and it just happens to be glass, but working on a glass surface really helps so that there's no drag. You can use a craft sheet and that's second best in my opinion. But like the Tim Holtz Tonic glass mat is great to have. And then this desktop that I personally have is just an IKEA glass top that I have sitting on Alex drawers. So we are going to ink blend all our panels. And somebody asked me what ruler this is. This is actually a ruler on my website. And I know that there's some people here that have been taking classes with me for a long time. I am, and Catherine mentioned this too, I'm math challenged and I'm ruler challenged. And what's awesome about this ruler is it shows all the measurements for you. So my friends Amy and Lisa help kit for me for classes and events. And I love when I can be like, oh, that's 4 9/16. It makes me feel so special. So it's a ruler I have for sale on my website. It comes in 6-inch and 12-inch. And I love it. All right. So we're just going to get all of we're going to do our upper body workout here. And we are just inking and blending all of these white panels. Oh, I was looking at the comments and not holding the paper, so I'm wrinkling. Not surprised. I just put my marker in the timeout. Oh, that sounds like something I would have to do. Yeah, just put it in timeout. And again, you can always color, stamp and die cut another roller coaster and maybe color it a different color for one of your cards. If you're asking what size this one is, it's 1 3/4 by 1 3/4. All the measurements are in that awesome booklet that Scrapbooking Cards Today put together for you guys. But that one, I did have a little bit of a typo. So that was one of the things that they emailed about. All right, and then we have this panel, our big panel, and we are going to ink it up. You don't have to go all the way to the bottom because we are going to be putting some pattern paper down there, but we want to get it about 3/4 of the way down. Oh, did Gina K have some crazy measurements? Yeah, back in the day, before my ruler, anytime again, my friends Lisa and Amy help me kit for classes because I normally travel and teach a lot. So I can't be doing all of the traveling and the kitting. But normally my kits would always be, 1/4 of an inch, a 1/2 an inch, or 3/4 of an inch. But now I get to be really fancy with 16ths and 8ths. All right. So that is good enough. Again, you can leave the little bit of the bottom empty, white, or you can ink blend the whole thing. It doesn't matter. And now what we're going to do is we are going to start, I think we're going to set that aside because what I would like to do is actually, I'm looking at the time. So I started at 4:30 and I'm pretty sure I have till 6 and it's almost 5:30. I think what we should do is make our interactive card because then that way, if we run out of time with the assembly of the other 2 cards, it's pretty straightforward with the pictures and with my directions. So if I end up going fast at the end, nobody will miss out on that information. So interactive cards. I have been card making since 1999, and I've been teaching card making since, 2001-ish. I never, ever, ever made interactive cards. I don't have the patience to measure, right? We already talked about my measuring problem, and scoring and cutting and being very precise. That is just not my strong point. So I started teaching for Lawn Fawn at trade shows and different things like that about 7 years ago. And they did not have interactive dies at that time. So everything was peachy keen in my world. I was just teaching the Lawn Fawn cards, right? Teaching the really cute little scenes and obviously coloring and things like that. Thank you, Scrapbooker Cards today. So class goes till 6. So, I only have a 1/2 hour. Thank you. So yeah, we're going to make the interactive card. So then all of a sudden, Kelly was like, we're going to start making, and Kelly Marie, one of the owners of Lawn Fawn, she's like, we're going to start making interactive cards. And I'm like, oh, okay. So not only did I have to start making interactive cards, but I had to start teaching interactive cards. And that made me really nervous. But I have to say, Lawn Fawn's interactive dies are really intuitive and they make it really easy for you to learn how to make an interactive card. And when they come out with an interactive die, there's always a really good intro video for you to watch to help walk you through that interactive piece. And then I always try to feature the newest interactive die in whatever class it is that I'm teaching at the time. So we are going to start with our interactive card. Hopefully, you guys did a little bit of prep work for this. Basically, what I had you guys do is you attached, without gluing it down, but you attached your blue paper to your white cardstock so that you cut these 2 pieces at the same time. And I tried really hard to, make the directions clear in the handout here. You can kind of see I had you guys line it up with the roller coaster. Okay. And so what we're going to do, and we also have our green Spiffy Speckles paper here. So what we're going to do is we're going to attach the blue paper to our white cardstock. And I'm just going to use a Lawn Fawn glue tube. You can use a dry adhesive if you're worried about getting any glue out on the edges. Whatever adhesive you guys normally use. And we're just going to line those 2 up. And the reason why we have the white cardstock is, one thing with a slider card is you want to make sure you have a nice weight to the paper that you're moving. And the slider also will work much better once it's actually on the card base. It just needs that extra weight to help move it along. And then we are going to add our green spiffy speckles to the bottom. And it's going to overlap the blue just a little bit. This is our ground. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take our big roller coaster piece, and we've also got a small roller coaster piece. And I basically kind of want to overlap it onto the grass a little bit. And I'm going to kind of just see, you know, how much of that purple, right, is going to go. So I'm going to add a little bit, and I'm actually only going to add it to the bottom because I don't want glue in the track of the slider. All right. And if you didn't get your prep work done, no worries. You guys are always going to be able to watch this replay. So I have the smaller roller coaster here. You can see it is covering some of the track. That's okay. That's what we want it to do. And we are going to take one of our little trio of cars. Okay, we've got our little trio here. And I'm going to actually take my scissors and cut the back car off, kind of follow the curve of that car. And then I'm going to clean up the edge of the two cars that are left. And these guys are going to go up and over the hill. I really recommend for this that you're only dabbing a little bit of glue on their wheels, okay? Because again, we do not want any adhesive going in where that track is. All right, so I'm just adding a teeny bit of glue to their wheels and putting them on the coaster. I loved this little trick just to kind of cut the coaster so that it's going up and over the hill. All right. Next, what we are going to do is we are going to adhere the main roller coaster. So a little bit of glue, and we're going to adhere that down. All right, and it is going to cover one of those roller coasters or one of those coaster cars, and that's okay. All right. And then we're going to take one of our big cars, and we're going to grab a little bunny, and he is going to go in the car. So you can kind of see he goes right in there. So I'm going to add a little bit of adhesive to the bottom of his feet and where his tail is. And I'm just going to put him into the car. However high or low you want to do it. It's your little bunny. I think my quote in the book was, you know, don't worry because nobody is going to see my sample when they get your card, right? All right. So next what we're going to do is I'm trying to think it through. Sometimes I get, excuse me, sometimes I get ahead of myself. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to flip this panel over, our coaster plant panel. And I showed in your handout again where to put your foam tape. And I'm going to actually get my roll of foam tape out to show you guys. But what I do is I like to use 3M foam tape. My roll is really big. I take it out like so, and I fold it in half. All right. So then what that does is that gives you a double thickness. All right. And then what that also does is because it's that 3M foam tape, I find it's just really easy to be able to cut it into the widths and thicknesses that I want it to be. And I'm kind of really frugal when I use foam tape on my regular cards, but when you are using it on a slider card, sorry, forgetting my words. When you're using it on a slider card, you don't want to be frugal. You want to make sure you put a lot down because again, that's holding the base or the card up so that everything will slide really well. But what we want to do is grab our penny, and I like to kind of put my penny, it's definitely not going to go down here because we're going to end up stopping because of the coaster being there, but I like to keep my penny in mind that it has enough space for it to move along the track. So as I'm putting my 3M foam tape down, I am always checking that I'm not going too close to where the penny needs to go. All right, so hopefully that makes sense to you guys. So up here, right, if it's up at the top, that's why I've cut my foam tape to be skinny. See? Because now it's not, there's plenty of room for it to slide. All right. And then I just kind of go to town, literally, and make sure that I put a lot of foam tape down. Okay. And now that I did all 4 sides, I now like to reinforce the centers as well. Again, I do not skimp when you're making a slider card. Don't skimp on your foam tape. If that's honestly like my #1 rule. My second rule is probably always make sure there's room for the penny and that your foam tape doesn't get in the way of that. Okay. And this, the way I'm putting the foam tape on might look different than the handout. There's no right or wrong way. It's just making sure that, you know, you have a good amount. All right. And I actually just want to put one more little piece on the peak here. Again, making sure, right? I put it there, but there's still plenty of room for the penny on both sides. All right. Yep, double thickness of foam tape, Lisa. I kind of showed, I just take my roll of foam tape out and I fold it in half, and then it's a double thickness, so it's higher up. All right, so now that we have that on the back, what we're going to do is we are going to take our little, take our penny, and you hold it behind your roller coaster track. And we're going to take another small piece of foam tape that is double thickness. But the trick with this foam tape is you don't want it to be the width of the track. All right. We want it to be a little bit skinnier. So I'm going to slice a little bit off. So what I always like to do is I hold my penny there, but I want wiggle room. Okay. Let me just put this down here and I'll show you. I want wiggle room. See how I'm able to wiggle? I haven't stuck anything to it, but I want to be able to wiggle that foam tape in between the track. That means that it's not too wide. All right. We're working on how to do the penny part, Lynn. So again, another little piece. And if your piece is more a square or a circle than a rectangle, then that's going to make your item flip. So if you want your roller coaster car to flip, then you'll make yours a square. I'm not going to let my bunny be that scared on this roller coaster ride, so I'm not going to do that this time. So I'm going to take this piece of foam tape, only taking the sticky off of one side. I'm going to hold my penny behind the track, and I'm going to stick my foam tape to the penny. Press really good so we can make sure. And again, it's not holding anything in place yet, but it's just getting it in the vicinity where it needs to be, and I still have wiggle room. Hopefully you guys can see that. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I like to take just like a powder tool, and I dust the edges of the foam tape. The foam tape, the 3M foam tape edges are not sticky at all, but this just helps get it a smoother slide. And then I also like to just kind of dust the opening. And again, it just helps smooth the slide. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put our penny back in place, right? We're going to peel that piecing off and we're going to stick our bunny on there. Press really good. And now we've got our bunny on our roller coaster, right? It's not going to slide as well, like I mentioned, because it's not on the card base yet. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we are going to put it on our card base. So in order to do that, it's going to end up kind of going centered like so, but I don't like that that white paper shows up, right? So that's why you guys have this other blue piece of paper. You are going to attach that behind. So when you put your piece on, it'll look like it's seamless, right? Like the sky's still there. So I'm going to just add a little bit of glue. I'm going to kind of get the vicinity. I'm going to kind of put it in place, make sure there's no white showing, right? And then press it. Probably using a dot runner to put that piece down would be smarter because you could always lift it up and reposition it. And then I'm going to just peel all of these backings off and attach this main panel to the card. And then I want to show you guys the really fun trick I have to share with you on how to make your own sentiment banner. All right, so I'm just eyeballing it, getting it in the center. And there we go. Look at that. We've got a slider. I love it. I love it so much. So fun, so fun. Every interactive card I make, no matter how many times I've made them, it just makes me so, so happy. All right. Lawn Fawn sells all kinds of sentiment banner dies, but I know not everybody would have those maybe in their stash. So a really fun way for you guys to be able to cut your own banners is I just took a piece of white cardstock. I gave you guys the measurements in the handout. I'm going to kind of put it in place. And I am going to stamp "Enjoy the ride." Just going to take my stamp off and position it towards the left-hand side of the banner, but you've got plenty of room, so give yourself room on the end. And when I stamp sentiments, I like to use a VersaFine Onyx Black. So I'm just going to ink that up and stamp. All right. And for the sake of time, I'm probably not going to get to cleaning my stamps. All right, so we have "Enjoy the Ride" on our banner, and we've got some room at the end. So you want to decide how short or how long you want your points to be, right? There's no right or wrong way. It does not matter. But if you want really long, skinny points, then you're going to have more room at the end of your sentiment. But if you want short, stubby points, you're going to want to cut a little bit of this off. And you'll learn the more of these that you make, what look you like, right? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start by just taking our scissors, eyeball the center, and just do a little snip. All right, so hopefully you guys can see that on camera. I just cut a teeny little snip in the center. Then I'm going to take my scissors at the point or the corner of our banner and line it up, the corner to the end of the snip. Okay, so just cut that little triangle off. And then I'm going to do the same exact thing on the other side. And this is math, you guys. Again, I told you I'm not a math girl, but we are doing math. We're doing angles. You're going to cut from the point of the cardstock to the end of the snip. And then you have your banner. And I have to tell you, this is a trick I learned 100 years ago from Sherry Carroll, back when she used to teach with Hero Arts. When I used to manage a paper crafting store, I was really lucky back in the day to take a lot of classes with Sherry and Jennifer McGuire and Tim Holtz. And so I just, keep teaching all of the amazing things that I learned from them. And so I'm just going to put some foam squares on the back of this banner, and I am going to attach it to my card, having it overhang the edge. Okay, and then what you can do is, because this is raised up, you can just take your scissors along that edge and snip it. All right. And then to finish up this card, we've got a little ticket booth. Right here. And you can leave it blank, or this set came with really 3 little fun words: tickets, games, and food. So I'm going to add the word tickets to mine. And when I add a little stamp, I still like to just use an acrylic block. But I am going to use that VersaFine. You can use any black ink you would like. Okay. And the way that I did this is I'm adding a little fox in the ticket booth. And this is the fun part of class, you guys. This is like the decorating, and this is where I'm usually in my studio and I just start making up fun little stories to myself. I'm like, okay, well, the fox, he's going to be the ticket collector, and the bear's going to have balloons. And I'm just in my, and I don't talk out loud to myself very often yet. But in my mind, I am definitely just coming up with all of these fun little stories. So I just tucked the fox into the ticket booth with his head kind of coming out. I'm going to add a little ticket to his paw. And when I do that, I like to just add a little bit of the glue tube to his hand, paw, hand, whatever, and then press that ticket into his hand. And then I pop up all the things. I really, really love to add dimension to cards by just adding some foam squares. It's kind of one of those supplies in your studio space that's the least expensive, but I think it adds a lot of impact to a card if you have some fun dimension and layers. So I'm going to add my little ticket booth. Then we have our bear, and we're going to add some balloons into his hand. So I'm just gathering the 3 balloons, and they're going to kind of go behind him. So what I like to do is just add a little dab of the glue tube and pick up those balloons. The glue tube's nice because you can kind of move it around. You have some wiggle room until you get it positioned the way you like. And then again, I'm using some squares, foam squares. Oh, I bet you, if you've taken a class with me before, I'm sure you have learned the banner trick. Um, I, there's just some things that I just still love to do, and that banner one is awesome. So there we go. We've got our slider card. All right. So let's go back to our other 2 cards. Looking at the time. I'm going to start by, let's do our stamping just so that you guys feel good about that. So again, I'm going to use just a stamp positioner because I'm doing bigger sentiments. And I lost my stamp set. Oh, here it is. Okay, so I'm going to stick this guy back on here. And so we are going to stamp, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. Have a thrilling birthday. And this is just going to be on one of our little ink blended squares. All right, so I'm going to take out the stamps and I kind of just eyeball where they're going to go. And I'm just going to move my Misty a little bit because eyeballing and doing it off to the side is not a smart thing. Okay. I'm just kind of getting that where I want it. I'm going to move my magnet. Okay. And you could do sentiment by sentiment, you know, line by line, or put them all together, whatever it is that you are comfortable with. And then I'm going to just stamp that. All right. And then we have our large panel. Now, what's kind of neat is if you are making multiple cards, or maybe you made this design a while ago, but you want to replicate it for somebody. And I know this isn't something that you guys can do right now, but if you have a previous card and you really liked where that sentiment went, right? You can just kind of lay it down on your Misty and use that to position your sentiments over it, right? If you're like, ooh, I really liked how that came out last time. I want it to come out that way again. This is a fun little trick. This is actually something I do a lot when I'm teaching in-person classes, because I've made the cards already, but maybe I'm setting up the sentiment blocks for you guys to do in my classes. So I have those two the way I like them. Press my Misty down onto it and pick them up. And then I'll move this obviously out of the way. Yay! We've got new people loving interactive. So I have an online class coming up actually next week, and we are going to be making the new Swish and Pop interactive card. So that's really exciting. I'm excited to teach that one. And I'm going to grab the little heart and add that at the bottom. I love that Lawn Fawn sets come with little hearts and little stars and little smiley faces and all kinds of little added things that you can add to your cards. All right. So now let's just continue on with this card that we're working on. You guys have two pieces of Spiffy Speckles cardstock, and then I have this crazy little white square that I had you guys cut out. I think actually that was a fun measurement that I was able to use my ruler on. So what we're going to do with this Spiffy Speckles cardstock on both of these cards, actually, I'm just grabbing, I have a scrap piece here, is you are going to tear it towards you, and that's going to give a really fun edge for your grass. So I just take the paper in my hand and I tear towards me, and you can tear up and down to get really jagged, or you can just go across, whatever look you want, right? Because it's your card. And so I just kind of go in and out, up and down, actually, not in and out, sorry, and just tear it. And this is a really fun way to kind of show dimension on a card and get some layering happening, and not a whole lot of work involved. You could even ink blend the edges if you wanted to add even more dimension. And if you accidentally maybe cut your pattern paper wrong, you could ink blend some cardstock green and use that. This is Lawn Fawn Spiffy Speckles pattern paper. And this is kind of like an all the time pattern paper that they carry. It comes in a whole rainbow of colors. And I love it because if you don't want to get inky and speckle your own paper, this is a nice quick alternative. All right, so now that we have this done, what I did with this little white square is I wanted to kind of just have an empty like booth, and I didn't want to see behind all that was going on behind our scene. So what I'm going to do is take a ticket booth, and you can stamp a word on the booth if you want. I didn't on this one, but there's no right or wrong way. Oh, we might have a visitor. Yep. Jack, back it up. Back it up. My kitty Jack was just sleeping, and this is about the time when he finishes his daily snooze and he comes for some attention. So he was just sneaking in here. Sorry, Mama's working. Anyways, sorry about that, you guys. So I've got my ticket booth here. And actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's put our roller coaster on first. I apologize. So to do this roller coaster, what I'm actually going to do is attach the back roller coaster to the front roller coaster. All right, just like that. And then the whole roller coaster is going to go on this card. Now, I kind of snuck it under my torn paper. So this is another benefit of kind of not putting adhesive everywhere, right? And that way it kind of looks like it's behind the grass. So now back to the ticket booth. I didn't want to see all those. It was just very distracting to me to see all of that behind there. So what I'm actually going to do is take this little white square. I'm just going to dab a little bit of adhesive. And this is a little finicky, a little tricky. And you could skip it if you want. But basically, I'm just kind of figuring out where I want this ticket booth. And I'm kind of putting that white square down. And then I will just put this ticket booth right over it. All right. Awesome. Then we've got a bear and a fox and a bunny. Got all the critters on this card. No, Jack. No. Mama's teaching. No. Mama's got almost 650 people watching me. I can't snuggle. All right. So I'm just putting a piece of foam dot behind each of my critters. And I find this really easy. I'm just going to put my bear down. Okay. I'm going to take my little bunny and I'm going to dab the teeniest bit of glue on the string of the balloon. And we are going to put that behind his little hand. Just going to hold it in place for a minute. And then we can go ahead and put him down. Just kind of, I keep looking over at my sample. I don't want to, it's okay to stray from the sample, but I don't want to stray too much and confuse you guys. So that's the only reason why I'm making sure I'm doing it similarly. And then we're going to take our little fox. And these guys, the fox and the bear, the items they're holding in their hands are above their hands. So that's why I like to kind of place them down first, dot a little bit of glue on their hands, and then stick it, whatever it is they're holding, in their paws. All right. Perfect. And then we are going to take our trio of coasters and our single car. little guy. And these are foam taped, popped up as well. If you haven't followed the trend yet, you can see I pop up all the things. And some of you guys, I think, that are watching have been taking my other online classes, and you guys were shocked that I didn't glitter anything. Well, I knew we were not going to have time, but the other thing that is a true Jenn thing is to glitter all the things. All right. And then this is just going to get put onto a card base like so, right? Perfect. Okay. So then we have our third card, and I think what I'm going to do is just kind of explain it to you guys because we're getting near the end and I don't want to run over in time. But basically, this is our card base, and so what you're going to do is we have all of our panels, and these just get placed on here, and I put foam tape behind them. And they just get placed evenly, right? But we have our green paper. You're going to tear just like we did the other card and adhere your grass. This roller coaster is actually going to go on here. I can quickly do this. Just a little bit of glue on the top because you're going to actually let this overhang the bottom. Right? Just like that. And I just take my scissors and go along the edge of my cardstock. Right? All right. And then you're just going to end up decorating just like we did the other two cards, okay? And I'm pretty sure, I just want to peek at my directions real quick. I am pretty sure that I mentioned what I popped up and what I didn't. Yep, I did. So the directions for card 2 are on page 19, and I did explain you know, what was flat and what was popped up, because I know that's a question that people have in my classes a lot of times. And this design of this card, the layout of this card, was actually inspired by Lawn Fawn has a backdrop die that's called the Peekaboo backdrop, and it cuts out the frame for you. And it's a really, really fun backdrop to use. So I was just kind of inspired by that and wanted to share that card layout with you guys. Whew! Talk about marathon crafting, right? But hopefully you guys are good. I wanted to make sure we got through that interactive card, and then the techniques like the ink blending and the paper tearing and all of that. I am gonna hop off of here and hop on over into the lawn fawn group, into the crop and create Facebook group, and I will be there to answer any questions that maybe I missed during class, or any questions maybe about Lawn Fawn, or even my classes, or maybe about Jack, Gus, or Mr. Harley. So I will see you guys in a couple seconds, and thank you so much for watching.